Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
What is up, and welcome into another special off-season edition. We are the One and Done Show. We are your fast break of college basketball information. I am Eric Romoff. You can catch me on those Twitter streets at FantasyNav, and he is the arbiter of our big board. Suddenly has a lot more names with some pretty solid landing places. Mr. Mike Holland, MC Holland 34 on Twitter. Mike, how's it going tonight? What is the latest off the dome in the world of college basketball for you?
Yeah, it's the end of May, which was a very long May trying to cover this transfer portal. The news is starting to slow down. NBA draft decisions are being made, so the draft is kind of taking shape here. Kind of moving on to starting the process of building like roster previews, which is always fun. Looking at different conferences, how these rosters look for betting purposes, for DFS purposes, which we obviously covered during the season. Hoping to get that content out, obviously, in July here. So I'll be looking forward to doing that on drroto.com. But today I'm excited because we get to talk about a team with a bunch of changes this offseason, really starting at the end of last year. Lots to talk about regarding the LSU program. And here to join us is Matthew Brune, the writer for Geaux247, covering this LSU Tigers hoops program. Matthew, thank you for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank y'all for having me. I'm excited to talk some LSU basketball.
Yeah, we are too. This LSU program has been very busy this offseason. A lot of big changes for the program. Will Wade, who was let go just before the big dance, just before the Tigers were bounced in the first round, unfortunately. And now this team has had a lot of turnover in its ranks. So I guess my first question is, what is your assessment of how this messy situation was handled with Will Wade, and what can Coach McMahon do or what has he done to stabilize this program moving forward?
Yeah, it kind of caught everybody off guard, honestly, when he was fired, because it felt like when the notice of allegations came out about Will Wade, it felt like it was just another toothless thing, the NCAA put out, where it was like, all right, the NCAA is like, hey, we got you, we haven't forgot yet. So everyone was just like, okay, we can move on with this. Like, still nothing's going to happen. But I think a big thing is athletic director Scott Woodward, this being I believe his second year on the job, and he's really taken it upon himself to kind of change and I guess clean up the LSU image to a degree. I mean, you see it with football, Ed Orgeron out, Brian Kelly in. Baseball, it's his own hire. I mean, he's made significant hires in, I believe, 5 sports now at this point, 5 major sports. So new athletic director, it's a new time. And I think the athletic director was just tired. Scott Woodward was just tired of the program consistently having this dark cloud over it. And so with that being the case, I think Will Wade was obviously in hot water throughout the past few years. I mean, for anybody who's been paying attention. And so it kind of made it easy for him to move on once the notice of allegations came out. Obviously, a lot of fans love Will Wade. I mean, he really put LSU basketball back on the map. I mean, LSU basketball from basically 2005 to 2017 or so was very much average at best. And so past 4 or 5 years, I mean, LSU had become one of the winningest teams in the SEC, and because of that, it hurt a lot of fans to see him go. But I think the program is definitely in a much better place than it was 5 years ago because of him. But now I'm interested to see what Matt McMahon can do, and to kind of go off that, the situation, because the NCAA didn't hand out any punishments. There was no punishment. It was just a notice of allegation, and LSU took it upon themselves to fire Will Wade to let him go. So we're still waiting to see. Will there be any punishments? Will there be a postseason ban of any sort? Will there be scholarship limitations? We don't know that at this moment. I think there's an expectation maybe something would come down, even if it's small. But at this moment, we don't really know. So that's kind of the whole situation and how it all played out.
Yeah, it's the NCAA, right? So let's take a dive into this roster here. Look, obviously, whenever there's a coaching change, there's high turnover rate. First, just wanted to kind of get your thoughts. Obviously, coming over from Murray State here, Coach McMahon brought in some pretty talented players. The Murray State Racers were a pretty solid team last year, getting a 7 seed in the tournament. Bringing along with them Ohio Valley Player of the Year, KJ Williams, one of my favorite players in college basketball. You get the guard Justice Hill and Trey Hannibal. So obviously these guys are going to bring some talent to the roster, but an understanding of McMahon's system. So how important will this trio be to the Tigers' success and what's shaping up to be a pretty tough SEC?
Yeah, they're going to be huge. I project Justice Hill, or Juice Hill, his nickname, Juice Hill and KJ Williams being starters for this team from day one. Trey Hannibal, I think, can work his way in there. I looked at film of all the players on the roster, and so I have a pretty good understanding of what they have on hand. And I think Justice Hill is going to be your primary point guard for a majority of the season. Just seeing what he did at Murray State, his ability to operate ball screens, his ability to shoot off of them. I mean, to get to the rim even for his size at 6 feet tall is very impressive. And I think he translates well to the SEC, even if it is an obvious step up in athleticism and size. So Justice Hill, the point guard, no doubt. KJ Williams, probably the 5. I mean, obviously you may be able to slide him to the 4. I don't really see a 5 on this roster that could replace him. So I probably have, I would have him starting at the 5, and then Trey Hannibal be a nice rotation piece. If, it is kind of a crowded bench when it comes to guards. There's a lot of guards like Trey Hannibal, and we'll talk about others, whatever, but Cam Hayes and, Justice Williams coming back as well. So it's an interesting situation, but I definitely think Hill and KJ Williams will be 2 starters for sure.
Yeah, certainly, plays to Coach McMahon's benefit that he's going to have a handful of players that are very familiar with his system and should be able to have a considerable role from the get-go. Another new name, at least to the LSU Tigers, that did not come from Murray State is the forward Kendall Coleman. He came over from Northwestern State and was one of the better front courts in the country. He was first team All-Southland Conference, 15 points, 10 boards average last season. So we'd love to get your thoughts on the big man Coleman and the skill set that he brings to this Tigers team.
Yeah, Kendall Coleman is a fascinating player because of the improvement he made from his first year to second year. Like you said, everything you said is accurate. He took a big jump up, basically walking double-double over there. And it's not just that he did it against bad competition in the Southland, which is not a good conference, but he did it in all the games that they played against top-tier competition. I know they played LSU. They played, I believe it was 5 or 6 games against top 100 teams or so, and he played really well in a lot of those games. In fact, his field goal percentage went up in those games. So that's really promising to see. He rebounds at an incredibly high level. His rebounding range is really impressive. My concern with him is, and why some people see him as a starter on this team, potentially, I kind of struggle with that because he can't shoot the ball, especially from 3. He just doesn't shoot. So obviously you have KJ Williams who can shoot. So maybe that's, maybe you can do a 1-2 punch there. But Kendall Coleman's definitely a around the rim type player. He can finish well. He has a little bit of a post hook there, but really you want him rebounding, and defensively is another area I'm interested to see how he can play at the SEC level, because I wrote about this. He's going from the second worst conference in the country to the second best conference in the country. That's a huge jump there. So we'll see how it goes, but I definitely see him being at the very least a role player for this team in the front court.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's going to be interesting to see how he adapts. Obviously, with all these mid-major players, whenever they come over to these Power 5 conferences, how they adapt is a big storyline for these teams. One guy that I want to talk about is Adam Miller. Obviously, everyone jumped in the portal once the season ended.
Yeah.
We were expecting massive turnover. There's a lot of talk about Miller. What was he going to do? I missed last year with injury, but he's very, highly ranked recruit, transferred from Illinois. So how big was it for, Coach McMahon to keep him in the fold? And, what kind of expectations do you have for him next year?
So before this year, I told y'all I got here in August. I got to know the coaching staff with Will Wade and everything. And I was able to go to a couple practices before this past year. And Adam Miller was to me, the best player on the team, if not at least the leading scorer on the team. That's what I had him projected as. And then obviously he goes down with a knee injury just a couple weeks before the season, and it was really heartbreaking. And it's like the entire season, it was just like, man, imagine how good this team could have been with Adam Miller, because to me, he's a 15, 16 point per game guy last year. And so the hope this year is that you get him back to that form, obviously coming back from the injury. We heard he's been cleared at this point. He recovered really well from it. So you hope coming back from that injury, especially with the, science and medicine nowadays. I mean, players are recovering really well from those. So you hope he comes back and he's the leading scorer on this team. Pretty plainly, pretty bluntly, I think KJ Williams will also score a lot of points, but Adam Miller at his best is a 15, 16 plus point per game scorer in the SEC. And that is huge because he's a guy who can get you a bucket off the bounce in isolation, late clock situations. And so I have really high expectations for him. I think if everything goes well, he is probably, in conversations of, late first, second round draft pick. And I think that would be huge for this team. And that's kind of what you need in the SEC nowadays, right? You can't just go out there with a bunch of good players and like, hey, let's just defend and piece this together. You got to have NBA guys at the end of the day. You see what Arkansas, you see what Kentucky, Auburn now. It's really tough. So I think best case scenario and my expectations is that he is a very, very good player for this team, especially on the offensive end, and he can defend well as well.
Yeah, certainly fair to say that it has been a bit of an arms race in the SEC basketball conference here over the last couple of years. And it would be perfectly fitting if Adam Miller, one of the few remaining Tigers from seasons past, is able to return and really shine for this team. I wanted to take a step back, Matthew, and talk a little bit about this new NIL landscape that we're all getting adjusted to. Potentially, if some of those conversations with Coach Wade happened a few years later, there might not be any notice of allegation or any potential threat to the program. But here in 2022, crazy marketplace, a lot of really big deals out there. I want to get a gauge from you. What can you tell us about the NIL market for this for these LSU players, and what's maybe something that surprised you about it as you've gotten used to the program?
Well, yeah, I mean, like you said, Will Wade was a different case completely. We're getting to know Matt McMahon a bit, and he's obviously coming from the mid-major ranks, so he's never, had the type of funds to work with when it comes to LSU. I mean, LSU is a very different animal in that respect. I think it definitely played a role in getting a couple of these guys to come back, especially. I think like we said, all the 13 players entered the transfer portal from LSU. So to get Imwani Wilkinson back, to get Justice Williams back, and most importantly, get Adam Miller back, I think there's a piece of NIL in all three of those. And I think Adam Miller, especially when his decision came down to TCU and LSU, I think NIL was one of the factors, along with his budding relationship with the coaching staff. And so I think when you see high major players transfer from one school to another, I think it's, there's a lot of NIL going into it. I think obviously the Murray State guys were coming over regardless. I think Kendall Coleman was coming over regardless. And then the freshmen, which I think are real fascinating, and Jalen Reed and Sean Phillips and Tyrell Ward, the three freshmen that they got that are top 150 players. I think there's always going to be an NIL aspect to it where you can plan it out, but LSU hasn't been at the forefront of NIL, especially in the basketball program, as far as this cycle goes. Whereas you see, Memphis, Miami go to, a couple of the big players in the basketball landscape that I think Illinois is probably doing a great job with it as well, with how well they're recruiting. This isn't a team I don't think built off NIL, and maybe in 2 years, I'm saying Matt McMahon is building a whole roster off NIL. I don't know, but this is definitely a team that's mostly, some veteran transfers that are looking for a home, looking for a place to kind of shine. But I think Adam Miller and maybe the returners are the guys that probably benefited off NIL the most, especially since LSU people already know them.
Yeah, we've been trying to follow all these deals, and it just seems like it's just the wild west out there. So crazy times. But we're finishing up May, right? So going into June, we want to know, is this the year of the Tiger, and what needs to happen for them to challenge in the SEC and make a run in the NCAA tournament?
There's a lot of things, because I think if you would ask me this a month ago or two, I would have been like, there's no way that they can compete in this SEC. I've been impressed with the freshmen that I named, Jalen Reed, Tyrell Ward, Sean Phillips. I think those first two names, especially Ward and Reed, really raised the ceiling of this team. Those are two top 50 players in the country and in the freshman class. So you add those type of athletes, that type of explosiveness, along with the consistency and the talent of Justice Hill and KJ Williams and Imani Wilkinson returning, and go down the list. I think it gives you a lot of depth. I think it gives you a lot of options, which is something that Matt McMahon will need this year as he tries to figure out his first year. There's not a lot of players. There's really very few. There's maybe one player on here that I could see probably redshirting, and that's Cornelius Williams, a freshman. Outside of that, I think all 12 of the other players here can help you in one way or another. And obviously some will hit their ceiling, some will reach their potential, some won't. So you kind of have to work with it. But in order for them to reach their ceiling, I think Justice Hill, I think Adam Miller, I think that 1-2 punch has to be really, really good. Justice Williams off the bench as like that sixth man will have to fill it up as well. So you got those three as your key backcourt guys. KJ Williams obviously has to be probably an all SEC caliber player. So you're looking at KJ Williams, Adam Miller leading the pack, and then everyone else kind of filling in. And Imani Wilkinson was a great defender last year. In my opinion, he was the best defender on the team, and LSU was one of the top 10 defensive teams in the country. So you have a lot of pieces to play with here. You have some depth, you have some versatility. As I mentioned, you're going to need some of those guys to be NBA prospects, or at least reach that potential, and Adam Miller, KJ Williams, in order to compete with an incredible SEC. But I think there is a path here to where you can get to 9-9, 10-8 in conference. 10-8 in conference in your first year under McMahon, with all of the turnover they had, would be incredible. That'd be incredible. So yeah, that's kind of what I think fans are hoping for in year one.
Yeah, certainly a lot to be optimistic about there for this new look Tigers team. We will certainly have to wait and see a little bit to see how everything shakes out in the SEC. But one thing that is certain, Matthew Brune absolutely dialed into this Tigers program. Nobody covers Tigers hoops better than he does. If you aren't already following him, get over to his Twitter at @MatthewBrune_. Read all of his work over at Geaux247.com, and that is Go spelled the Ed Orgeron correct way, GEAUX247.com. Matthew, thank you very much for spending some time with us and for getting us up to speed on these Tigers hoops.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Anytime y'all want to talk LSU hoops, just shoot me a text and I'll be on.
Thank you.
We'll absolutely take you up on that. Matthew Brune, again, dialed into this Tigers program. Feeling really good about what I've uncovered, what we've learned here in just a few short minutes that we spent with him. For those of you that are still here and viewing and joining us on YouTube, get over, hit that like button, subscribe if you are not subscribed already. And also in the comments, there is a prompt. We want to know from you who you think was the most important addition for the Tigers team this offseason, And with that, we will continue the ball rolling forward and talk at least one of Mike's personal favorites. That's the Texas Longhorns. They bagged themselves a top 10 transfer. Mike, how long were you dancing? How many drinks did you pour up? And after you're done celebrating, tell us about who the Longhorns picked up.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm pretty excited, right? I've been watching everyone get into the portal dance after we won last year's portal and kind of fell on our faces last year. And, here we are back at it again, getting former Iowa State guard Tyrese Hunter to come on down and play that lead guard role, which was kind of missing from last year's team. So he's number 9 on our big board. He was the Big 12 Freshman of the Year. Man, if you watched what he did in the tournament in those couple of games, and the kid's a player. So definitely a really good get here. That's, like I said, kind of the thing that was missing from this Longhorns offense. You had Marcus Carr coming over from Minnesota, known as a scorer, trying to play more on the ball. And this now gives him the option to play off the ball and play a little more comfortably. So expecting a better season from Marcus Carr with this addition with Tyrese Hunter. And this backcourt is just looking pretty salty. You got the 5-star freshman Arterio Morris joining the fold. So, you look at those 3 guys right there, and yeah, it's some room for excitement, right? So I'm cautiously optimistic, right? After seeing kind of the downfall of our portal win last year, but yeah, I think overall, obviously, we always talk about it. Guard play is huge in the NCAA tournament, and yeah, he is going to be one of the better lead guards in the country next year. So definitely excited. What are your thoughts? And don't step on me too hard here.
Yeah, so I don't know if it counts as stepping on you because I'm going to pose it as a question. Yet again, this Longhorns team is looking absolutely stacked, right? They have all of the horses they need to be a competitor, not only in the Big 12, but in the tournament itself. But it feels like Chris Beard never really figures out how to put the pieces together, right? So with another huge transfer, number 9 on your big board at drroto.com, a lot to be excited about. But what can you tell me about Chris Beard and how he's potentially going to deploy all these pieces that might give me a bit more confidence than we've seen from him in years past?
Yeah, you're gonna get me started on pace, aren't you? So you're looking at it, and it's funny. Like, Oklahoma's kind of doing the same thing. They're bringing in Grant Sherfield and Bama and getting these guys, and it's like these two teams want to play super slow and play these defensive grind out games when you have players that are pretty dynamic offensively. So to me, it comes down to Texas. What is Chris Beard going to do? Is it going to be more of the same type of motion offense? Or he's going to, get up and go and, play faster. The times they did play faster last year, they beat Kansas. I was there. That was an incredible game. They scored 80-something points in that game. And it was just kind of up and down. And yeah, it's just, we're moving into a new building here. The Moody Center is going to be a ton of excitement down here in Austin. I think for me, is Chris Beard willing to adjust as a coach? He's never had, Texas Tech obviously had some good players, but now he's landing, some of the top transfers, getting, 5-star recruits here. Dylan Mitchell, another man, this guy can jump out of the gyms and be an NBA lottery pick. So he's going to have a ton of talent. It's just, what is he going to do? So that's the biggest question. And I guess we have some time to kind of see how that all turns out.
So an initial read, you can just give me a yes or no answer. Are you confident that he'll figure out how to put it together this year or no?
It's too early, man. It's too early to answer that question. Well, give me some time to think about this.
I will afford you that because we are technically still in May, but when we record later this week, I might hold your feet to the fire again. But with that, we will move on to Seton Hall. They have themselves a new coach, Shaheen Holloway, and this man is continuing to build a pretty strong roster. Just picked up another big man coming through the transfer portal. Why don't you tell us about what's going on with Seton Hall?
Yeah, so following coach is the former Peacock himself. It's Casey Ndefo here, 3-time MAAC Defensive Player of the Year. He's number 64 on our big board. Almost averaged 3 blocks a game, and Doug Eddard and some of these other guys kind of got all the pub here, but this was really the guy that's was the spark plug for that St. Peter's team over the past couple of years. So I think for me, obviously coming over to Seton Hall in the tough Big East, right? We'd love to talk about how crazy this Big East is going to be this year. Seton Hall's looking pretty good right now. He's going to join Alexis Yetna, who's coming back as a dynamic player, another year removed from a pretty bad injury he had a few years ago. And then one of the best shot blockers in the country, Tyrese Samuel. And this front court's looking pretty stacked defensively. And the guard play, I know we're losing some of the guys from last year, Roden, Aiken here. So, you look at it here, and Dre Davis is coming over from Louisville. Alamir Dahl is coming over for Clemson. You have Akadale coming over from Pitt, who's number 74 on our big board. So, man, just shaping up to be a pretty nice team here. And, man, what can you say about the Big East right now?
Man, I feel like there is a series of shows in and of itself to break down the Big East, right? This has been an absolute arms race. We're seeing not only the kind of traditional powerhouse programs of the Big East really loading up, but now some of these kind of newer faces are really starting to emerge. You might have caught me smiling as you were talking about Ndefo joining and his time as a Peacock. He was certainly one of our favorite DFS plays throughout the year and as we got into the tournament. as Edert was getting all of the spotlight, he was staying nice and under the radar and under owned. So expecting to have a pretty fair impact in his early days at Seton Hall. One thing that is for sure, I'm sure I sound like a broken record here, he is going to be underpriced for a considerable part of the early part of next season. So another name to jot down and to keep in your personal record books for DFS as we spin that up in the beginning of the new college basketball season. And with that, we'll head to our final thoughts. And all of a sudden, here on the last day of May, we've only got one guy left in our top 10 that hasn't decided on his new home yet. So why don't you tell us about who that is and close us out with any other thoughts that you have?
Yeah, it's Malachi Smith. Reports here that he's looking at Gonzaga and Texas Tech. So you know which way I'm leaning here. But yeah, just a dynamic scorer, just a big piece that could really change some things here. Just a real good scorer, distributor, can just do it all, really. You know, we had two guys up here before the news that Isaiah Mosley is staying in the NBA draft here. So, yeah, that kind of dampers the transfer portal a little bit. But yeah, I think, you know, just looking at it as a whole here, mid-majors, we don't really talk about them as much on this show, but man, there's some quality teams being built through this transfer portal. You look at, you know, UMass, they're playing the A10. They're bringing in 5 quality transfers with new coach Frank Martin. You get Boston College forward Gianni Thompson, Louisville's Matt Cross, who played a little bit in DFS. Rachel Diggins from UConn, who we haven't seen quite as much. He's bringing over 2 of his South Carolina bigs with them as well. And you look at something like Georgia State and the Sun Belt, you're getting 3 down transfers for Coach Jonas Hayes here. You're getting Xavier's DeJuan Odom, who we played a little bit last year. Colgate's Brendan Tucker. And then if you can get the waiver here, you're going to get Jermaine Mann from Vanderbilt, who's a pretty solid player. So, you know, Georgia State lost some players, but, you know, kind of reloading with some of these down transfers here. And then some huge implications with, you know, Jelly Walker coming back to UAB, and they're looking like a really, really good team. Obviously, we picked them to beat Houston in that first round. Little did we know Houston was going to go a long way. So that didn't quite work out. But obviously, Walker, conference player of the year type player. And then you get Eric Gaines coming over from LSU. It's number 86 on our transfer board. Man, talented backcourt here. You add Javian Davis from Mississippi State, and you get the Brewers from East Tennessee State. So, yeah, definitely some interesting news coming out of the mid majors here. And then a team that we kind of hit on already is San Diego and what Steve Lavin's doing. We talked about him getting Jaden Dallaire from Stanford coming over, Eric Williams, who's actually going to be our new number 100 when our board posts tomorrow. So getting a couple of top 100 players, and then getting Marcellus Earlington, who was with St. John's a few years ago, and he's a really good scorer. And that's a pretty good 3 for San Diego, and they're going to be pretty strong. So, yeah, just pretty interesting to see what some of these mid-majors are doing. The biggest news, though, that kind of just came down is that Terquavian Smith, North Carolina State, is coming back. And, man, we made some coin off of him last year. The guy just gets buckets, jacks up a ton of threes. He's going to be surrounded by more talent this year. NC State has gotten some pretty good transfers. So he's going to obviously have a little more room to operate and be able to create. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of said it was slowing down, but slowing down, right? That's it's still pretty fast paced and what's going on. So, you know, just keeping track of all of it and starting to build these rosters out. So it's fun to see, you know, how these teams are going to kind of stack up as we head into conference previews.
Yeah, slowing down is a relative term, right? We were at literal breakneck speed, and now we are simply pedal to the metal. So incrementally slower, but still fast and furious. I love the idea of Eric Williams being the bubble boy and now making it inside of the top 100. It's fantastic. We talked a bit about what it is that Coach Lavin is building here at San Diego, and just the state of down transfers in general, right? This is something that is very much so become a trend. I have to assume, I haven't seen a ton of reporting about it, but I have to assume that a lot of that has to do with the new NIL landscape that is available to essentially make free agency a real thing in the college basketball ranks. So definitely going to be some pretty interesting mid-major and kind of down program teams that are going to be on the rise.
And then real quick, I got one little factor to add. And you know what? I missed the Mobley and Mosley. It looks like Isaiah Mosley is still in the transfer portal, and it's Isaiah Mobley from USC that is staying in the draft. So, hey, Eric Williams, you might have to wait for some more news here. I was just looking back, and I was like, man, like those two names are so familiar, and I completely whiffed on that. So, yeah, still 2 of the top 10. So I'm excited to get this board back going again. But you never know. There's still an option for him, obviously, to remain, but it looks like he's withdrawn. So Isaiah Mobley staying in the draft. So implications out there on the Pac-12 side. So, yeah, a little excitement before we sign off here.
Well, I feel like for good measure, and to be fair to Eric Williams, we need to take the Dalmatians model and expand your big board to 101 now that we have anointed him as on there. Would hate to pull the rug out from under the young man. For those of you that are still with us on YouTube, if you have not already, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. It definitely helps us grow the channel and get this information out to more hoop heads out in the world. For those of you, for some reason, that are not already following Mike on Twitter, MC Holland34, MC Holland34, MC Holland34. Nobody is keeping track of all this offseason movement quite as thoroughly as Mike, and all of his work is over at drroto.com. Get yourself to that website, get yourself signed up, get into our Discord, and let's get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.